Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Atheist Experience. I'm Ashley Perrien, your host, and my co-host this week is Russell Glasser.
Hi there. My turn.
Yes, we are now rotating out, in case you haven't noticed. We have 4 different co-hosts right now that we're rotating out, so everyone's going to get beyond about once a month. They got Russell, Jeff D., Karen Glasser, and Don Baker. So next week it is going to be Don Baker on. I'm not too sure exactly what he's going to be talking about, but he will be on next week. Anyway, it is March 28th. We are sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a non-profit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings every Sunday right now. Currently, we're kind of settling down, it looks like, on Crescent City Beignets on 6th Street. That's every Sunday morning at around, today we started at 11:30. By then, kind of the breakfast crowd has left a little bit, and so have a little more space to ourselves. But that's on West 6th Street, and like I say, that is every Sunday morning at 11:30 or so. Other things that we do, every Monday night we have Godless Gamers. That starts at 7 o'clock, play a whole bunch of board games and such. Thursdays we have Happy Hour at Antonio's Tex-Mex on the southbound feeder of I-35 just south of 183. Starts around 7:30 or so. And then on, let's see, and that's actually it for our regular things. Our website is atheist-community.org. We have a link there to different activities and email lists and such that we're on. If you look around there, you'll be able to find information on exactly when, where, and details and such on what we're doing and when we're next doing it. Apart from that, University Atheists and Agnostics, they're a registered UT student organization, and their website is uanda.com. I believe on the titles on the board we have .org. That is not correct. It's actually a .com website. They have meetings every Thursday, I believe. Check the website. They have details and schedules there for exactly when and where they are. And I believe that is it for right now in terms of announcements. Oh, the other show that we do, the Nonprofits. Every other Saturday at atheistnetwork.com, we have the Nonprofits Internet Audio Show, which is produced and... Would you call yourself a co-host, I guess?
Sort of.
Okay. Jeff D is hosting. Russell kind of co-hosts, apparently.
I'll just go with fearless producer.
Okay. That's every other Saturday. The next show is, we had one yesterday. The other one, I believe, is going to be the 10th.
Yes, the one yesterday is available for download now.
Okay. And I believe you talked a lot about the Newdow case.
Yes, we did.
And a couple other things that Jeff mentioned, but they escape me at the moment. But yeah, I mean, it sounded like a decent show, so we'll get that when I have a chance. Anyway, that is it for regular announcements. We are a live call-in show. We're on for the next hour and a half. We'll take calls in a little while. We usually have our co-host giving a talk first. And we are going to go over to Russell now, who's going to talk a little bit about the Newdow case and let us know the latest.
Okay. Well, generally, of course, we are moving away from doing so much news on this show, leaving that for the audio show, the Nonprofits. Exactly. But this week, the atheist news was so heavily dominated by one particular story that it seemed appropriate to bring it up. As you know, Michael Newdow stood before the justices of the Supreme Court on Wednesday, pointed to one of the courtroom's 2 American flags, and declared, "I am an atheist. I don't believe in God." And from all accounts, Michael Newdow is really kicking butt.
Yeah, I've read 1 or 2 different articles, and yeah, he's getting applause in the courtroom.
Yeah, I mean,
some good things.
Let's be realistic about this. Most people want him to lose this case.
Yes.
I mean, there's no question about that.
Yeah.
And you know, a number of the justices on the Supreme Court may be already leaning in favor of making him lose the case in whatever way they can think of. But still, I mean, apparently Newdow is an incredibly personable guy, and from everything that I've heard, And I've seen him on talk shows, and he seems like a pretty interesting character. You know, he's representing himself as a lawyer. He actually has law training, but he currently works as as an emergency room doctor.
Yeah.
What a loser! He dropped out of that original field. Underachiever.
I saw that it's a special circumstance where they're allowing him to defend himself, or be his own lawyer in this case. Essentially, they wouldn't normally allow that, or because he hasn't been practicing long enough, something along those lines.
Right.
But yeah, from my understanding, even the justices who are against him, in terms of most likely going to be voting to keep the pledge as is,
yes,
were kind of pointing out that he really holds himself well.
Yeah,
he makes really good arguments.
And the case when the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of him, the rationale that they used was pretty much impeccable from our point of view.
Yeah.
Here are a few excerpts from the trial. When Dr. Newdow described under God as a divisive addition to the pledge, Chief Justice William Rehnquist asked him what the vote in Congress had been 50 years ago when the phrase was inserted. The vote was unanimous, Dr. Newdow said. Well, that doesn't sound divisive, the Chief Justice observed. Dr. Newdow shot back, that's only because no atheist can get elected to public office. The courtroom audience broke into applause, an exceedingly rare event that left the Chief Justice temporarily nonplussed. He appeared to collect himself for a moment and then sternly warned the audience that the courtroom would be cleared if there's any more clapping.
I like that. Hang on a minute. You're not supposed to be clapping for that.
Good job, Mike.
Yeah.
Later on, he made an argument which I think pretty much sums up why he's there in court talking about this, why this case had to come to court in the first place. It remained unclear whether Dr. Newdow persuaded the justices, but he was obviously prepared for the arguments. He told the justices, I'm saying that I, as her father, he's talking about his daughter in school, have a right to know that when she goes into the public schools, she's not going to be told every morning to stand up, put her hand over her heart, and say, your father is wrong, which is what she's told every morning. Well, she does have a right not to participate, Justice Sandra Day O'Connor observed. Dr. Newdow said opting out was a huge imposition to put on a small child, and he continued, government is doing this to my child. They're putting her in a milieu where she says, hey, the government is saying that there is a God, and my daddy says no, and that's an injury to me.
Yeah. That's surprising. It also goes into that almost coercive nature of assuming you don't do anything, it's going to be assumed that you believe.
Right.
You have to go along with this unless you're willing to put yourself up in front of everybody and say, I don't believe this, and I think you're all wrong.
Exactly. But my point of view, and this is probably a lot to ask of a kid, but my point of view when it comes to the adults out there who may feel like they're coerced into either pretending to believe in God or just, trying to avoid the subject very studiously, is we ought to be speaking up more. And that's the topic that I'd like to talk about today, which is standing up for yourself as an atheist.
Yeah.
It's something that I think people don't do enough of, and it's something that we try to do just by having this show. You know as well as anyone that when people a lot of times call in, they say, why do you even have a show? What are you doing, trying to convert people to atheism?
Yeah.
My point of view is, no, we're not trying to convert people to atheism. In fact, when people set out to specifically convert somebody to something, I think that's obnoxious.
Yeah.
I mean, I am irritated by a Christian who just walks up to me and said, hey, have you heard the good news about Jesus? Now, some people would argue that just to fight back, we ought to be going around spreading the word of atheism. Hey, have you heard the good news? There is no, there is no God.
It's all just made up.
I think that's taking it a little bit far.
You're a new one.
I mean, if I think it's rude behavior coming from anybody else, then why would I do it?
Exactly. Exactly.
On the other hand,
playing devil's advocate.
No, I'm not playing devil's advocate. This is really what I think now.
Okay.
When people hear about what atheism is, it's usually because it usually comes from people in the church or people writing, writing from the pulpit to the general public in mass-produced articles, saying, this country is going to hell because of all these atheists who have evil in their hearts and are going to destroy the world and abolish religion.
Yeah. Stamp it out in all public forms.
Yeah, and what we say is, if we're not going to tell people what atheists are like, who are they going to hear it from?
Yeah,
those guys.
Yeah.
Atheists, I think there's no arguing that actually being an atheist is a marginalized position in this culture. But the fact that it's marginalized is sort of self-fulfilling, because the more marginalized we get, the more atheists are kind of afraid to bring up the fact that they are atheists.
Yeah.
We're embarrassed. Everybody hears all the time, atheists are evil. They're only atheists because they want to do bad things and they don't want to feel like there's a God oppressing them. Yeah. And, saying you're an atheist would bring up a need to make a bunch of embarrassing explanations, and a lot of people just don't want to make the effort.
Yeah.
But by not making the effort, of course, we're letting them get away with that and making ourselves more marginalized.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that it's important to go ahead and stand up for ourselves. So when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, can I tell you about Jesus? You have a right to take that as an open invitation to discuss their beliefs and discuss your beliefs with them.
Yeah.
And I realize that's scary for a lot of people, which is why I didn't say you have an obligation, although I thought about that.
Of course.
People, for instance, you'll have coworkers who constantly forward all kinds of sappy emails.
Yeah.
And you would think that if they knew that you're an atheist, then they would stop doing that because it's annoying.
Well, that would be the polite thing to do.
That would be the polite thing to do.
But the realistic thing is they're going to send you even more.
Right, because they're like, hey, oh, that poor person, he is an atheist.
Yeah. He apparently hasn't heard of Jesus before.
Yes. Right. As if anybody hasn't heard of Jesus in our culture. Come on. But, all he needs is someone to reach out to him and tell him the truth. Now, I am totally for free speech. Go ahead, reach out to me. But do not be surprised when I answer you.
Yeah, when I reach back.
It reminds me of something we were talking about way back in 2001, after the terrorist attacks occurred on September 11th.
Okay.
An editorial came out, if you recall, where the basic content was, thank goodness all the atheists have shut up since September 11th. Thank goodness we're not hearing from them anymore.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure that was actually true, but if it was, I have a theory, which is that, believe it or not, a lot of atheists were just too polite to
essentially rub it in.
To rub it in, yes. I mean, let's be practical here. We know a lot of people are theists, and we know that the nation was in a grieving period at that time. And when a lot of people have just died, maybe it's a time to go ahead and let people find comfort in their imaginary friend. Yeah. And not jump in their face and say, hey, that imaginary friend you're praying to isn't real.
Exactly.
You moron.
Exactly. Which is actually an important distinction, because a lot of religions typically go after people who are in that position.
Yes.
You have school children, you have people in the hospital.
People who are vulnerable.
Exactly, who are vulnerable. You go and talk to them, because they're going to be the easy ones to convince. Because they want to believe something.
It's not just something religions do, it's something con artists do.
Exactly.
Exactly. you'll see, you'll see con artists go into this long spiel about how most people retire, or most people can't retire, and they die in poverty, and they're living hand to mouth. They can't afford anything. But
therefore, give me $40,000, and I'll make sure you can retire.
Yeah. So, some atheists, anyway, are polite.
Yeah. And like I said, I do remember a lot around that time. They had certain things going around, messages going around saying, thank God and God protect us and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And it's kind of a bad time to go stick your finger in the wound and twist it around a couple times saying, no, he's not really there. So,
and there's nothing wrong with being polite.
Yeah.
But you can let that politeness, you can carry it too far to the point where people will take advantage of you for knowing that you're going to be polite, and so they feel free to wave their religion in your face and say, and just say whatever they want, and they're pretty sure that you won't respond. In fact, it's perfectly likely that a lot of these people have never really heard a response before.
Yeah.
Lots of them have never heard what atheists are all about, except from religious people who have a reason to make you hate atheists.
Yeah. Which is actually one of the hard parts about some people as to why they don't respond when, have you heard the good word about Jesus or whatever. It's because chances are if someone's coming up to you with that approach, they have argued and debated.
Yeah.
Maybe not much, maybe not well, but they've at least got some boilerplate responses to all the different
And a lot of them, if you peel through the first layer, are dumb responses. But,
exactly.
But they sound good.
Exactly. But at least they have that.
But
if you just walk up on the street and you don't host a TV show on atheism, and you haven't, looked at the arguments and talked with a lot of people, then you might not, you may just have to fall back on I just don't believe because I just don't see evidence.
And if you never hear, if you never argue with people, then you won't get any practice.
Exactly.
And that's the only way to get good at it. I remember when I was in college, these guys like Reverend Brother Jed or something like that, and this guy named Cliff would always be on campus. And I heard students arguing against him. Most people seemed to dislike him, but I noticed that the students' arguments were actually pretty bad.
Yeah, yeah.
It takes practice, just like anything else.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring this up, but not go through it yet. My wife received an email from an old boss of hers. My wife has not been working since late 2001 herself because we had a baby.
Okay.
And so she was... So anyway, she's been a stay-at-home mom for a while, but she was friends with this person at work who was her boss, and this woman found out that she was an atheist, but they never really discussed it.
Okay. Did they find out when she was working there?
What?
When they were still working together?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Which is another thing I want to point out is that people finding out you're an atheist won't necessarily get you fired. If that's what you're afraid of.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'd like to give a shout out today to somebody who might be watching. He's actually, in some sense, my boss.
No.
And he found out a few months ago that I was on an atheist show. He happened to catch me flipping through channels one time. He's a Christian, but he's pretty good-natured about it, and we've actually kind of bantered and joked about it and sent some emails back and forth. And he said, and when he found out I was going to be on today, he said he'd want to call and bug me. So, so I let him know when this is on. So, Jeff, if you're out there, hi.
You're welcome to call in a little bit later. But yeah, actually speaking about that, the first time I came on the show a couple of times early on when we used to have the group solstice shows. Mm-hmm. During the solstice, we would have, like 20 people on, something like that, from the ACA. And I had been on one or two of those. I think the first time I tried out as co-host, this was like 2.5 years ago or something like that. Again, the first time I went on as, a solo, me and Martin, I think it was. I went on, I don't work on Mondays. I went into work on Tuesday. On the way to my desk, I hadn't even been there 10 minutes. My manager at the time, who is on the phone, just like mutes the phone and gives me a big thumbs up. I saw you on TV. Excellent job. Yeah. And then I get back to my desk. Again, still haven't even officially clocked in yet. And the guy in the cube next to me had seen me on the show and gave me a big thumbs up for it.
You know, quite honestly, I'm surprised that so many people actually bother watching public access.
I know. But it's a good thing. So.
I mean, really, what you'll find is that a lot of people who hear you talking about this may not think, oh, this is the most horrible thing I've ever heard. Their reaction may be, you know, I've never heard this stuff before. Nobody's ever mentioned it.
Yeah. And I think it's important that this show typically, it's pretty well thought out. We have good arguments. We're open to discussion. You know, and all of that type of thing. We're not just here saying God sucks and y'all are all stupid.
Yeah, and we're friendly, loving. We're here to make you feel better about you.
It's a fun show. And yeah, I mean that makes a big difference.
The floor manager is making gagging motions at me now. So yeah, anyway,
it's nice having that, you know, because again, it's a good show. We're not attacking anything.
Yeah.
And so if they come out and, you know, say y'all are just, you know, a whole bunch of atheists and y'all just want to piss everybody off and why can't y'all believe in God? It doesn't fit.
And that's something I meant to say about the Newdow case a minute ago, is that if you listen to the general buzz about what people are saying, like on conservative talk shows and radio stations and TV shows, people who don't like Newdow are saying, you know, well, why does he have to make all this trouble? Why can't he just shut up and let people have their religion? And, you know, why is he imposing his values on us? And, of course, you know, the reality is the opposite, which is that inserting the phrase under God into a essentially state-sponsored litany was imposing religion on non-believers. Yeah. And the reason that Michael Newdow, who, by the way, I admire very much for standing up for atheism,
so publicly.
You know, the reason Michael Newdow felt he had to do this was because he felt that it wasn't right to have an official statement that says, you know, Americans believe in God. Because, you know, we're Americans and we don't.
Yeah.
So anyway, my wife gets this email from her former boss, which was one of these irritatingly sappy pieces of spam that gets passed around about how the whole country is going to hell in a handbasket, and it's all the fault of those, you know, well, it didn't blame the unbelievers, but it blamed people for being too timid about sharing their religion, which, you know, they're not. And the email included two really nauseating stories. One of them being this story about a seminary school where the professor tells the students to all bring in the pictures that they drew of people that they don't like, and we'll put them up on a dartboard, and everybody gets to throw darts on them. So the students all throw darts at it. Yeah, so the students all throw darts, and then the professor rips away the dartboard, and there's a picture of Jesus behind the dartboard. So all the time you were throwing the darts at the people you didn't like, you were really throwing the darts at him, and the class burst into tears.
Oh, jeez. I had not heard that one before, actually. That is pretty nauseating.
It was and the second one was just like some hypothetical conversation between Satan and Jesus, which sounded like a joke because Satan and Jesus are, you know, talking to each other. Satan's like, ha ha. Satan's like, ha ha, I'm going to introduce death and suffering into the world. And Jesus says, well, I'll buy all those souls off of you. How much do you want for them? And Satan says, all your tears and all your blood. And Jesus said, done. And then he paid the price. And we're like, okay.
What?
Is that a punchline? Because it just ends there. So it's like, if you're going to waste my time with this stuff, can't you make it amusing?
At least make the material good.
and then it went off on a long rant, which my wife's ex-boss did not write, of course, but it's been going around the spam routes for years now. and and I understand you've actually received this one in the past.
Yes, I actually got or at least this very similar one.
Yeah.
And yeah, we replied to it too.
And we thought, well, what do we want to do? But I was like, well, she knows you're an atheist, so if you reply to this email and just basically respond to what it says, then two things can happen. One, she might say, I never knew that before, let's talk about it. Yeah. Or two, she might realize that it's not a good idea to keep you on her spam list. So that's a win-win situation.
Exactly.
So if we have time later, I'll go into this email.
All right. Well, the phone lines are opened up. We'll try and put the number up as soon as possible, if it's not already up. Like I say, it's a live call-in show. Go ahead and give us a call. Tell us what you think. And we will go to Leslie. How you doing?
Hi there, guys. How are you?
Doing pretty well.
I wanted to let you know that your show is beneficial. And since you've been talking about the fact that atheists need to have more exposure and need to profess their non-beliefs a little bit more, I wanted to relay to you a story that occurrence that happened to my boyfriend and I a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
Another story entirely is a few years ago I almost got arrested for protesting some Christians, but wow. That's not what happened the other day. What happened the other day was we had an army of Bible thumpers come to our door. They seem to come in groups. You ever notice that? They don't come by themselves.
How big an army was this? Like a regiment or?
It was a small platoon, I think.
Okay.
I think it was 2 men and a woman. Okay. And they come knocking on our door at dinner time. And my boyfriend was a little fearful of answering the door. He didn't quite know what to do with them. I said, "Go ahead, honey, answer the door. We'll handle this appropriately."
Invite him in.
So I'm sorry?
Invite him in for dinner.
Yes. So he answered the door, and of course it was from, I think, a local Baptist church. And I came walking up behind my boyfriend, and they were saying where they were from, and they said they wanted to talk to us about Jesus and wanted to ask us a few questions. And I immediately piped up and said, well, that's fine, but we're atheists. And there was dead silence from this Jesus army for about 2 seconds. They all just stood there with their mouths agape, looking at us as if we had professed that, we sacrificed babies or goats or something.
Yeah.
And so, once they got over their shock, I said, well, we don't believe in a God. And the leader of this platoon said, oh, well, we're sorry to hear that, but thank you for being so honest. People don't normally come right out and say that they don't believe in God.
There you go.
And so they went on for a few minutes and talked about, the new Passion movie, the Jesus Chainsaw Massacre, as we like to call it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to let you know that because of watching your show for the past 6 months, I think that I was more willing to let people know that I don't believe in God. That before I would have been more uncomfortable about it. I think I would have been afraid of the repercussions. But watching your show, I realized that, I need to learn to profess that more, because then people need to know that it's acceptable. Yeah. We're not evil.
Yeah, we are out there.
Good for you.
And thankfully, I'm not getting arrested for it anymore.
Yay! Yeah, the show and the group in general has done a lot of the same for me. I never really talked about it or did all that much about it when I first moved to Austin. And then, after falling in with the group and discussing it and just, in a sense, firming up my own beliefs or non-beliefs, basically just the time and discussion that I had here made me a little more willing to say, when people said, oh, so you're a Christian, instead of saying, well, I was raised that way, but I don't go to church anymore, I'd say, nope, I'm an atheist. Loud and proud.
One time some Jehovah's Witnesses came over to our house while Jeff and I were in the middle of doing a nonprofit show, and
that
unfortunately,
so much fun.
Unfortunately, my wife told them to come back later. She took a Watchtower tract from them, and we had a good laugh at that after the show. We flipped through it, but it would have been so nice if she'd actually invited them upstairs to come chat with us. But, oh well.
Yeah, that would have been good. So, okay, did you have anything else for us?
Well, some other time I'll call in and tell you all about how I almost got arrested, but that'll be for next time.
Go for it.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Okay, let's see. Who else do we have? Okay, we do have another couple callers. We're waiting for names on those right now.
Okay.
Let's actually see. I think I've got one or two short stories here. That could be somewhat entertaining to go over. Oh, yeah. A little bit off topic, but in Oregon County, they have the whole big gay marriage thing going on right now, and some cities or counties are saying, okay, gay marriages will issue the licenses. Some are saying, no, we're not going to. And here's a county where they decided, okay, fine, if you're not going to tell us who can and can't get married, nobody gets married. They stopped issuing all licenses, period. No one is getting a license in, this is Portland, Oregon. Or actually, that's where the article is, Benton County in Oregon. They've stopped issuing all licenses, period, until they basically get a hearing saying, okay, here's where the line is drawn. They were issuing licenses to gay couples, and then they stopped that when, again, they started having a firestorm of protests and court cases and stuff like that coming up. And so they said, okay, fine, nobody's getting married now. Okay. So that was
pretty inconvenient for the straight couples who wanted to get married.
Exactly, but it's in a way kind of a nice way to take a stand, in a sense of, if you're of that view at least. That
as a straight guy who got married by a justice of the peace, I bet I would have been kind of irritated by that. But on the other hand, as I heard it, when they shut down that court, the marriage licenses in San Francisco, there was a couple of women who had flown all the way from Phoenix, and they arrived 3 minutes too late. Ooh. So that's a really sad story.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to John. How you doing?
Hey, guys.
Hi, John.
I always thought that the definition of God was penumbra. And have you heard of that word? Penumbra is the definition of all that we don't know. It's kind of like the word for everything that manifests itself beyond our realm of recognition.
Right. So if that's true, then of course God has gotten smaller and smaller as we know more things.
Yeah. Well, penumbra, it's kind of like God is the ability for people to personalize the penumbra so that they can work it in their way. So when someone says, I know. So like when someone says, do you believe in God? To me, it's kind of like, do you believe in the penumbra? Of course I believe in the penumbra, because the penumbra is all-encompassing.
Well,
why call that God, though? I mean,
that's just the ultimate God of the gaps. I don't know it. It must be God.
There it is. That's right.
That's right. I mean, somebody could say, I believe in bologna sandwiches, and I'd say, I believe in bologna sandwiches too. And they said, there you go, you believe in God. And I'd be like, wait a minute.
Yeah, but it is a word in the dictionary, penumbra.
Sure.
Which defines all that we don't know.
Right, but I mean, penumbra isn't intelligent. It's not. Doesn't have magic powers, doesn't go around shooting lightning bolts. So by a lot of other people's definition of God, that just wouldn't fit the bill.
Well, it also encompasses serendipity, it encompasses luck, it encompasses coincidences, if you believe in coincidences.
Yep, I believe in all those, but I don't believe in God.
Yeah. I don't believe there's some kind of higher consciousness out there, that says, here are all the things that you don't know, and I have control over them.
And then there are some people that believe that the higher consciousness is all of us thinking together.
Some kind of collective group consciousness idea.
It's the spiritual internet.
But I thought I'd call in and throw that penumbra word in, just because a lot of times people, they don't. That's the way I picture God, is the penumbra.
Yeah,
it's pretty much putting it in that word, and then I can use it as I wish. For my future whatever, harvest the fields and that kind of stuff.
Well,
anyway,
whatever turns you on.
You guys keep it up. Good conversation.
Okay. All right. Thanks for calling. All right. Let's see. Again, live call-in show. Number should be at the bottom of the screen, and if it's not, producers, put it up.
Yeah.
Like I say, we are taking callers.
There it is.
Okay. And in the meantime,
if you're watching a rerun of that, I just pointed at nothing.
Yes, the show, we are live every Sunday, 4:30 to 6.
There it went.
It's going everywhere. On Tuesdays, we do have reruns, 4:30 to 6, Channel 10, same place. But like I say, Tuesday is a rerun. If you're watching this on Tuesday, don't bother calling in. You ain't going to get us. Wait till Sunday. So
Yeah.
All right. Let's say start off with the email.
Okay.
Why not? We'll go with the first couple lines of that at least. Let's see.
All right, so after Jesus says done, and then he paid the price, we replied, okay, so the price he paid was to hang on a cross for 3 days, then come back to life and rule over the universe for all eternity.
Yeah.
Some sacrifice, especially for an infinitely powerful being.
Yeah. And he hung on the cross for 3 days, but he died after, a couple of hours. He wasn't alive for 3 days.
According to the story.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's right. He didn't even hang on the cross for 3 days. He was put in the tomb, and then 3 days later.
Exactly, 3 days later he rose, yeah.
Magic. Poof. Then the email goes on, isn't it funny how simple it is for people to trash God and then wonder why the world's going to hell? And we reply, well, not if they're atheists, because atheists don't believe in God, and you can't trash something that you don't believe in. You can only trash the idea that some people have when they imagine it. And we don't wonder why the world's going to hell, because there is no hell. It seems to me that the believers are the ones who complain about the world, instead of learning to appreciate and enjoy what we have. Then the letter goes on, isn't it funny how we believe what the newspapers say, but question what the Bible says?
No.
Well, talking snakes, talking donkeys, walking on water, living for 3 days in the belly of a whale, turning into a pillar of salt. No, I can't imagine why anyone would question what the Bible says. Isn't it funny how everyone wants to go to heaven, provided they do not have to believe, think, say, or do anything the Bible says? Or is it scary? Actually, yeah, it is kind of scary to contemplate stoning your children to death for disobedience, the death penalty for working on Sunday, and being forbidden to wear clothes made out of 2 kinds of fabrics. I'm glad people don't try to live that way.
And I think on that one I actually responded along the lines of, all you're asking people to do, though, is accept your point of view and your religious ideas without actually thinking, analyzing, whatever the words they had used
Isn't it funny how people don't agree with my point of view when everybody knows that if people agreed with my point of view, then the world would be a happy place? It doesn't say that part, but it does say, isn't it funny how someone can say, I believe in God, but still follow Satan, who, by the way, also believes in God?
Yeah.
Beats me. I think both are equally made up. Isn't it funny how you can send 1,000 jokes through email and they spread like wildfire, but when you start sending messages regarding the Lord, people think twice about sharing? And we said, yeah, well, by now I bet you're thinking twice about sharing future religious emails with me, but if I see any good atheist messages, would you like me to pass them along? Isn't it funny how the lewd, crude, vulgar, and obscene pass freely through cyberspace, but the public discussion of Jesus is suppressed in the school and workplace? Nonsense! Students are, and always have been, free to talk to each other about their religious beliefs and even pray in school. What you're complaining about is that other students are allowed to argue back at them. And the teachers don't get to use the PA system to impose their beliefs on the entire school. And as for the workplace, that's just downright unprofessional.
Yeah, I think on that one I actually said something about the jokes that go around are rarely quite as offensive and decisive as some of the things that are in the Bible.
Yeah, they're rarely funny.
True, that too. So they're usually just something where it's kind of a waste of time. So, delete.
Yeah.
But
just a few more to go.
Okay.
Isn't it funny how someone can be so fired up for Christ on Sunday, but be an invisible Christian the rest of the week? I'll say people should quit being so fired up for Christ on Sunday.
Yeah, isn't it on this? I actually midway through I started kind of, instead of just responding to them, I started kind of mirroring it and saying, "Isn't it funny?"
Right.
How all these things. And I was basically, isn't it funny how people can be so fired up for Christ on Sunday morning, but then he's completely gone from their lives by Sunday at brunch. Where is the power of God if he's gone by brunch?
Well, it's free will. That's what they would say.
It's weakness.
And finally, isn't it funny how I can be more worried about what other people think of me than what God thinks of me? Not at all. I have evidence that other people exist. And the sign-off was, will you pass this on? I did. God bless you. And we signed off, thank you, and may the invisible pink unicorn who lives in my garage bless you. No response to that email yet.
Oh, darn.
Don't
Still
know if
waiting.
we would have sent that if Ginny was still working for this person. So
Yeah. I'd actually now that you read the end of it, I replied to the whole thing pretty much point by point, and I did send it back because they said, "Will you forward this on, or will you just put it in the trash like all the other things that you don't want to acknowledge in your life, or something?"
You put
like
it
that.
in with the rest of the trash. Is how it should be.
And I said, "No, I am going to forward this back to absolutely everyone I know because it makes good points on how not to think."
That's right.
And how to just blindly accept things. And so if you actually stand up and you believe in yourself and you have some thought on the issues, then maybe just blindly accepting all these things maybe isn't such a good idea.
Yeah.
So
stand up for yourself, guys.
Exactly. So, all right, we will go back to calls, and we have Charles. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine.
Okay.
Hi, Charles.
I'm a Christian.
Okay.
Now, the way I was raised, like a lot of people, I was raised in the church, growing up as a boy, kind of from generation to generation. You're really taught just to believe what your parents are teaching you because you assume that's correct and, you should do what they do. They want the best for you.
Exactly.
From what I've been listening to you guys say, you're not pressing the issue that people should be atheists. Christian people that are Christian seem to be pushing Christianity, the way of life, on other people. Jesus is everything. Some people say it's not. It doesn't work for me. We don't believe in God. They're Muslims. There are many different religions.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, for me studying myself, regardless to what I've been taught, Christianity is a way of life. If you apply your life, as far as in the past, if your life was corrupt, if you were having problems and you want to change and you would like your life to be better, some people may try Christianity, some people may try being different, whatever they want to try. But a lot of people that I've seen have been going to different churches, and, they say, well, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, that you will be saved and you will receive the gift of the Holy Ghost. And from the outside looking in, it appears that it would be like, well, this couldn't be real. How can you get some type of gift from some type of Holy Ghost, and they tell you about some dude named Jesus in some Bible that was written thousands and thousands of years ago?
Yeah.
Talking snakes and pillars of salt and so on.
My question to you guys is, have you actually tried this yourself? Have you been into the Bible?
Yeah.
Have you studied it? Have you been to a college just to learn about what Christianity is?
All right. First off, you had made a point a little bit earlier that Christians typically push their religion a little bit more than we are on this show. I know this isn't exactly what you're asking, but I'm just going back. I'll get to your next question in a second. That's not pushing our beliefs or lack of beliefs is not really the point of this show. It's education and outreach. We're here to tell Christians and believers and whatnot what atheism is about. What do we believe? What do we not believe? Why do we believe or not believe these things? It's more just to let them know where we stand rather than saying, you should be like us too. And so we're trying to explain ourselves logically and say, look, here's what we believe. Whether you agree with us or not is a separate issue. But here's where we stand, and we think that we've got a pretty good argument. As far as accepting Jesus, back to your second point, just say, Jesus, I have sinned, you are Lord, take over my life, and, go with the flow type, that sort of thing. I have seen those, hundreds of times on TV. For the longest time, I was actually raised Christian, raised Catholic, actually. I've always had doubts, never really had any kind of firm belief. I just didn't get these happy feelings that everybody else gets when they go to church. Later in life, you see these things on TV and they talk to you for 20 minutes saying, look how happy all these people are when they go to church and how happy Christ makes them and everything. And now if you'll pray with us, then you will be happy too. Usually at the beginning of those prayers, you have to admit that you're a lying piece of scum. And I admit I'm not perfect. I haven't done everything perfectly in my life, but I'm not that bad either. And so on one hand, one side of the argument is that I don't know if I could ever respect, we'll put belief aside for a second, even if I did believe in the Christian God and that the Bible is perfectly accurate, I don't know if I could ever trust or respect a God who says, unless you admit that you are complete scum and you deserve to burn for all eternity, then I won't, do anything for you. If you question me, even for 10 minutes, you're going to burn in hell. I cannot respect anyone or anything, any being, regardless of how much power they have.
Just to interject, I'm not sure if Christians would say that the 10 minutes thing would get you in hell. I mean, as long as the 10 minutes wasn't the last 10 minutes of your life.
Wasn't the last 10 minutes of your life, granted.
Of course, if it was, then you're really in trouble.
Then you're really screwed. But yeah, I mean, that's one side of it. I couldn't respect a God like that. The other side is I have a problem with anyone having to give up all their rational thought and basis. Just accept. Just, stop questioning, stop, debating, stop arguing, stop thinking about it. Just open your heart, open your mind, and let Jesus come in. Well, basically that's saying just shut down all your logical faculties. Just be dumb and believe it. Well, if you want to do that, why not do it for leprechauns and unicorns and genies and bottles and everything else? You can convince yourself to believe anything, but that's not necessarily a good way to go through life. If I were to just dump all my mental capabilities, I probably could believe in God, and I may be happy about it. But that's not necessarily a good thing. Drugs and alcohol can make you happy too. Not necessarily the best way to go about it, though.
I understand that. The reason if I asked if you were or actually have experienced this yourself to be a Christian,
okay,
as far as the way of life, in my opinion, you may disagree, you may not, but Christianity is not being Catholic, it's not being Baptist, it's not being Protestant.
Yeah.
Different books of the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, when you learn not only from just going to a Catholic church or whatever it is that you're being taught here, when you start reading it for yourself, and I understand when you say, well, what do I look like just telling God, well, I'm a sinner, or I'm scum, or I'm a piece of trash, and if I don't accept Jesus, then I'm just going to go to hell and burn, and that's just, but the Bible really doesn't say that.
Okay,
and,
well...
in so many words, what I'm trying to say is, atheism, if you don't know everything that you need to know that is in the Bible to actually make a choice to be atheism, well, before you make a choice, you want to know all that you can know. From my opinion,
okay,
I know that it has taken 1,500 years from studying for the 66 books of the Bible to be put together. So in order for me to make a choice on whether, well, there's times that a lot of Christians doubt and faith, believing in faith, and if it takes faith, if somebody's life is not together, and they can put faith and they can believe in something, and there are actual changes in life. Now, some people say, well, I tried it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, I'll just respond.
Would you say then that you follow what's in the Bible but not any specific religion?
What I'm saying is this: from me studying the Bible,
Yeah.
The purpose of me studying is not to find out if it's real or if it's fake.
You already assume that that everything in it is real.
No. The purpose of me starting to study the Bible in the first place is I looked at my life and I heard about, well, Christianity can change your life. You can change your life. You can live better.
Yeah, but drugs can do that. Drugs can change your life.
Well,
Drugs can. But if my life is less than perfect for whatever reason, there are several different ways that I can say, okay, let's make this better. Let's make the situation better.
But if you use drugs, there are side effects.
Exactly.
And if you use absolutely right. There are also side effects.
Is a book.
And if there's also bigotry and hatred. In Christianity, they're basically saying, if you're Christian and you believe like me, then you're a good person, then you're okay. Everyone else, they really kind of deserve to burn forever. And it's kind of hard to look at those people and say they're good. I can agree with you with
what you just said.
So,
Christianity is not about what people tell you. And you can go to some churches, and there's a difference between the religion.
Yeah, but so you're saying the only way to understand Christianity is not to listen to what people tell you, but to read the Bible for yourself, right?
No, what I'm saying...
Experience it for yourself, essentially.
No, what I'm saying is this. When I began going to church, it's written in the Bible that you're like sheep. You should have a shepherd. You need to be taught. If you're getting taught something, you can learn after a period of time. If you feel that, well, I need to learn more, I can't grow anymore here, maybe I need to read a little more, I need to go a couple other places where you actually learn that. Like, I'm learning a lot from you guys. Really, you guys are helping me out a lot. Basically, you're telling me in your walk of life, well, our experience with Christianity, we don't necessarily agree with it. We kind of been to church too, but our belief is this. With me, that's fine. I'm not saying be a Christian. I'm just trying to get a better understanding of where you've been and why you believe that what you believe. If you believe that, that's okay for you. But for me, and from what I've learned thus far, I'm trying to understand how can somebody get to a position to where they're just going to say, well, there ain't no God.
Okay. Basically, like I say, when I was growing up, I was brought up Christian. I went to church every week and all of that. But I always had questions and doubts. Essentially, it was just through reading and just looking at the world that I decided that it was a gradual process. First, I decided that, no, the Christian God, that's not it, period. I can't respect a God like that. There's no evidence for it, anything like that. But there could be some kind of higher power, general, generic God out there. And if you put all the religions together into a melting pot, then maybe you kind of got an idea of what that God's like. And then after, again, looking and reading and studying some more, I decided, no, it's a lot of wishful thinking. We have explanations and we have good reasons for why the world works the way it does. How the world got here, how people got here, why we act like we do, why we do the things that we do. We have good reasons for all of that. There's no evidence out there, or I have at least not seen absolutely any evidence of some kind of higher power, any God or anything like that. A lot of people believe it, but just because a lot of people believe something doesn't make it true. Evidence is what makes something true.
Right.
And I haven't seen any of that.
And I'll tell you where I'm coming from. I am myself a fourth generation atheist.
Okay.
My father was an atheist, and his father was an atheist. And now that I have a son, I would imagine that he's going to be did I say fourth or fifth?
You said fourth.
Yeah, I would imagine he's going to be a fifth generation atheist, although not necessarily. But my father, who's a physicist, he always wanted me to approach things in life scientifically, and he made sure not to tell me, like by decree, you must be an atheist like me. And I take very seriously what I think is everybody's obligation to go and thoroughly investigate what people are saying who you don't agree with. So, you know, I have read much of the Bible. I listen frequently to evangelist radio. People often wonder why the heck I do that. I've read a lot of Jack Chick tracts where at the end they say, you know, if you just get down on your knees and say, Jesus, I accept you read this script, then you're saved. So, you know, I said, okay, I got down on my knees, said, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, hey, I'm covered. Pascal, eat your heart out. Seriously, though, I mean, you know, I've tried to be as open-minded as possible about what Christians are saying. None of it really got to me.
Yeah. So, okay.
Is there the information you guys offer that explains what you believe and why you believe what you don't believe?
Yeah. Best thing to do is actually, if you go to our website, atheist-community.org, there's a link there to our FAQ, frequently asked questions, and it's got a lot of questions on there. A lot of the most common ones that we get on the show: where do you get morality? Where do we come from? Why is there no God? Where do puppies come from?
I don't
all
have
that kind of stuff.
one.
Well, maybe not that one specifically, but things in that vein at least.
I don't think that's all that frequently asked either.
But basically, that's a really good site to check out. Like I say, if you're just kind of looking for a good basic overview. So. We're going to go ahead and go on to the next call. Do you have anything quick for us left?
No, that'll be it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for calling.
Okay, thanks for calling. All right, let's see. Next we can go on to, let's see. Chloe, how you doing?
Hi, Ashley.
Hello.
Hi, Russell.
Hi.
Thank you for your show. Can I just interject with that gentleman that called? The shepherds are to be translated as our philosophers and our educators.
Okay.
That Bible's real antiquated, oppressive. It's actually an X-rated book.
They would just make a movie out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just do the Bible, the good bits.
Yeah.
You know, and all this other bashing of the Jewish people, of atheists, of the Muslims. You know, religion has caused more misery than any other single idea. I knew Madalyn O'Hare. I was her personal secretary. I was also her book representative. I honored her, and her birthday will be coming up in April, like mine.
Okay.
I wanted to ask y'all or the listening audience if anybody knows the whereabouts of her burial, because I attended the trial.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible thing what happened to them. And any of these religious addicts, these ignorant people, these hypocrites, they didn't know her. They don't know anything about what she really represented. She was also a veteran, by the way. Okay. She was a veteran. She was an excellent grandmother and a mother. And you know, there are many of us that would like to know if anybody knows the whereabouts, and it may be where her living son Bill will not disclose that because of the ignorance of a lot of people.
Okay.
You know, but
yeah, from my understanding, there's actually a member in the group who says that he knows where she's buried. I don't know. I didn't discuss with him all that much as to exactly how he found this out, but he knows exactly where it's at. We actually want to go out there sometime and get GPS coordinates for it.
Okay, well,
and find. I know it's north of.
Cool idea.
It's north of town, but I don't know exactly where. I can't remember. Again, exactly how he found out, I'm not positive on that. I'll have to try and get some information on that, and also find out exactly where he's talking about. And like I say, we might have that information up on the web or something like that eventually.
I think the best thing to do would be to have our call screener pick her back up, and you give you give him your number, and we'll try to pass out the question and see who knows it.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Russell. You know, she was so misunderstood, and even I, you know, when I came to work for the movement, I just wasn't mature enough, and you know, so many of us, we miss them very much.
Yeah.
We love them.
Yeah.
That man that called earlier, you know, it's so easy just to educate these people, and they choose not to. It's like the medical field, you know, we continue to evolve with new procedures and treatments, and, you know, that's the same thing with religion. And it's still so important of the urgency of church and state, because as we can see it now more than ever, there is the biggest atrocities going on with this administration with religion, and it is really devastating and sickening. But you know, I do want to thank you all for being up there and having the guts, you know, that we did too. And you know, Madalyn stood more than just atheism. She stood for more than that. Yeah. She was a wonderful woman. You know, she was sick in her later years, but if it wasn't for Madalyn, even the feminist movement, and I know there's people, especially with ACTV, that don't like that word, yeah. But for some of us women, you know, that was a genuine word, and you know, people just need to know that there was no kind of evil devil stuff going on with the American Atheist movement. Yeah. You know, with any of that, we were intelligent people. We were respectable people. You know, in fact, even more than some of these religionists. Yeah,
as are most atheists.
So, can I leave my phone number with you all to see if someone can call me, or we could all go as a group?
Okay. All right. Yeah, we'll try and. Yeah, okay, just stay on the line. We'll put you back on hold, and like I said, I can get that information. I'll try and see if I can get it for next week, and maybe I'll make a quick announcement at the beginning of the show next week, and see if I have some details on that, because I know who it is. I just like so I have to clear that up a little bit.
But you know, and at the same time, you know, it's really sad that you know, it could be dangerous, or it could be bad if other people, you know, see where they're buried, because they may go and do all kinds of bad things. And it really is sad and disgusting. And I have to say another thing too with this Christianity stuff is that they're really the ones that have disrespect for other human beings. Yeah.
Again, it's going back to the idea that we're right and everyone else is wrong, and they deserve to burn in hell for it.
Right.
So,
so you know, to you people that are watching this that just don't understand it, you know, I would ask everyone, you know, to extend their knowledge and attend more classes or courses of other intellectual freedom. You know, no more chains. Yeah. You know, because that's a true enslavement. Religion really is an enslavement. I mean, we are at war for oil and because of religion, and that is the honest truth.
Okay.
Thank you, y'all.
Okay, thanks for calling. Okay. And it sounds like...
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Well, call back.
Yeah, if you want to call back in, like I say, we can get your information on that. Like I say, we could try and get back to you on Madalyn. Like I said, I may have something on it next week. I'll have to try and find out about that for sure. So, all right. Anyway, we will go on to Ed. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, pretty well.
Ed.
Yeah, I find your show kind of interesting. I sort of watch it every now and then.
Okay.
What I find, it's a shame in a way, though, that you have to, as atheists, that you have to spend an inordinate amount of time defending your points, you know, your point of view from Christians. It just seems like it's almost kind of like if you had a show that said, hey, we don't believe in love. We think everyone who believes in love is full of, you know, crap.
Except
and all the people who believed in love kept
Yeah.
calling you up trying to convince you that love does really exist.
Yeah.
It's just, I find it's like just a weird kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do see...
it would be a nice world if atheism were the dominant one, and it had to be the Christians in our place.
I don't know. I don't know though. I don't know that it's a shame. I mean, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to get out there and again explain for ourselves where we are, what we believe, don't believe, why we are where we are.
Right.
For the record, though, if somebody didn't believe in love, I would probably say they're full of crap, and I would argue with them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? I mean, can emotions be proven? Can you prove that love exists? Can you prove that you're in love with someone?
Yeah.
You really can't.
No, you can't prove anything in a scientific sense. I mean, you can't prove anything at all.
Right.
Anything. But you can present evidence for something. You can say, we've observed a bunch of people in love. Here's how they act. Here's what they do where their loved ones are concerned.
Right.
Let's look at you and see if you do the same kinds of things. And you can kind of demonstrate that someone's in love. You can't prove it, but you also can't prove that, like, you know, this table exists in a philosophical way.
Yeah, nothing in philosophy or in, you know, sociology or psychology can be proven through scientific means. You can't, you know, put it in a bottle and shake it up or anything.
Because science isn't about proof. It's about evidence and what's the best conclusion to draw from the evidence. Proof is for math.
I mean, using that example, you could say there's lots of evidence that Jesus really did live.
Not really.
Not really.
There are lots of, I mean, look at...
Wait a minute. I mean, evidence that Jesus really did live is different from evidence that he had magic powers, rose from the dead, and...
Oh, I agree with you there. Yeah. I agree with you there.
You know, we really don't have an official position on whether Jesus lived or not. Maybe he did.
Right, and I think that if you go ahead and read the Bible, and I'm not suggesting you guys do it all, you probably already have.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus never said, he said, I'm the way, the truth, the light, all that stuff. But he never said, you know, he said, believe in me and you'll have eternal life. Now, he didn't say, if you don't believe in me, you're going to burn in hell for all of eternity.
Well, not in so many words, but...
In a roundabout way, but I think a lot of people assume things that are just wrong. He says, you know, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, if my neighbor's an atheist or a Muslim, he didn't say only love your Christian neighbors. He said, love all your neighbors as yourself.
Yeah, but...
Keep talking. Don't put the camera on me.
It's a difficult one to do because, again, in the Bible they do have things that say, you know, if you don't believe in Christ, then you are going to go to hell. Now they do also say that love everyone.
Right.
It's granted that's in there, but it's kind of a difficult thing to do to say love someone, but they're going to burn anyway.
Right.
You know, they're still not really the same as you. They're not really as good as you, but love them anyway because you should, because it's a nice thing to do.
Right.
Again, that's not a very good position, I don't think. Again, I can't respect any God, you know, that if I were to go walk out of the studio today and get hit by a bus, that I deserve to burn in hell. I'm not perfect.
Yeah,
I'll admit that.
I
don't think I'm that bad either.
Yeah, and I think that's a Baptist thing and maybe a Christian thing in general. But I personally don't believe in that. I think if some native is in the heart of the African jungles, he's lived his life good, he's treated his neighbors good, he's taken care of his wife, his kids, he treats the animals nice before he kills them. Why should he burn in hell? I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, luckily I happen to have a searchable version of the New Testament on my Palm Pilot. And the first thing I found when I searched for hell, well, second thing actually, was Matthew 5:29. And if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee, for it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell.
Right.
So Jesus does mention hell.
Yeah, but he doesn't say, believe in me or you'll burn in hell. That's something that modern Christians have come up with.
I'll keep searching if you want.
And the other thing is Jesus also referenced hell as Gehenna, the fires of Gehenna. I think it's Gehenna.
Okay.
And the other thing is, you know, Jesus spoke in parables. A lot of times the apostles wanted to know things, and he said, if you can't understand the simple things I'm telling you now, there's no way you'd believe these other things.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the problem with Christianity is that people distorted it.
Okay. But again, so assuming... Where do you get your beliefs from them? Assuming that we're not going to burn in hell for not believing, how do you decide this is what happens and this is what doesn't happen?
That's a good
question.
If
you're going to take some of the Bible and say I'll believe these bits, but not again. There are parts in the Old Testament. If your kids are insolent, stone them to death.
Yeah, and
that one we don't follow so much these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Why not?
Well, because I think one thing that Jesus said was he was without sin cast the first stone. And that sort of nullified that part of the Bible that the right-wing Christians love to use to support the devil.
Yeah, and then he went, "Ow, darn you, Mom."
But he does say that he is here to back up the old laws. He's not here to, say everything in the Old Testament, all bunk.
Right, but he didn't say stone people to death either and an eye for an eye.
No, but he said the Old Testament, that's good stuff. You should keep following that.
Exactly.
Yeah, but...
And even in the New Testament, there's a lot of stuff in there that, again, it's of questionable value.
Yeah, but I think when he was doing that, he was defending himself against a lot of the Pharisees.
Okay.
And those guys.
But the question still remains: if you're going to be a general, Christian, not
a fanatical one.
I guess, yeah, exactly. Not a Bible thumping, the word is a literal truth.
Yeah.
Then how are you deciding which parts are correct and true and should be followed, and which ones shouldn't?
That's very difficult.
So if you're picking and choosing, essentially, what is the basis for that picking and choosing?
Well, I know people who buy red letter editions of the Bible, and they only pay attention to the things that actually Jesus was purported to have said, not the other things that followed thereafter, and certainly not the things that...
But again, he says that I am here to back up the old parts of the Bible.
Right, but why didn't he, when that lady was being stoned to death for adultery, why didn't he say, "Good, go ahead, I'll throw the first rock"? He didn't. He said he was without sin.
Well, she'll be in hell anyway, so...
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a quote. Actually, the one about the Old Testament is Matthew 5, verse 17 through 20.
Right.
Allow me.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I can't see any reliable way of going through the Bible and saying this is good and this is bad. And given that there are some really, really nasty parts in there,
oh yeah, definitely.
I would rather say, again, let's look for a general worldview that has some logic to it, makes some sense, has some evidence to back it up, and go with that.
Yeah, but one of the problems is there isn't a whole lot when it comes to religion and spirituality, even, or whether the soul exists. There isn't a whole lot of evidence.
Exactly.
That's true.
So, but that doesn't mean the soul doesn't exist.
No, but it doesn't mean that it does. And believing
you're absolutely right. See,
believing it really, really strongly also doesn't mean that it does.
Yeah.
Right. But see, my opinion is that just because you can't, in other words, I can't prove to you that God exists, and you can't prove to me that He doesn't.
Okay.
Didn't try.
Precisely.
But
and it's
there
ridiculous for people to call up and to try to convince you that God exists and that you're wrong. That's the interesting thing I find with your show.
I don't think it's ridiculous at all. I think that if somebody really believes something and has a good reason for doing something, then they should be able to express those good reasons clearly. I mean, if you didn't believe in gravity,
right.
I would be able to sit you down and take you through, some basic physics lessons and show you this is why we believe in gravity. Now, you may wind up unconvinced at the end, but you wouldn't be able to say, well, there's no reason for believing that at all.
Right, but it's just like I noticed, like on your show, you don't have Buddhists calling, you don't have Muslims calling.
That's because there aren't a lot of Buddhists or Muslims in general in this country.
Right, but it's just
they do occasionally call, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe that any of them have the answer, and that anybody who claims to have the answer really doesn't know what he's talking about.
Okay.
Okay.
It's just because.
And like I say, I mean, I understand the point of view. You should treat all claims with some form of skepticism.
Right.
Now, again, saying that the sun's going to come up tomorrow, I'll pretty much buy that one.
Yeah, that's a good bet.
Good bet. Saying that there's an all-powerful, invisible friend who's who created the world and is guiding your life and really, really loves you and cares about your sex life, that I don't so much believe in.
Yeah.
Again, you have to provide a significant amount of evidence.
Yeah.
For me to say, okay, then I'm going to go to church every week. To say that I am going to spend my time worshiping Him. To say that I am going to try and convince other people that this is the way that you should be living your life.
Right.
If you're going to have to do something for this, you should have a reason to back it up. It's not just a coin toss. It almost sounds like you're kind of heading towards the general direction of Pascal's wager, as in it's safer to believe than not believe, just in case.
Well, no, because I don't believe I'm going to burn in hell. I don't believe in the hell thing.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, who knows? Hell could be. Jesus spoke in parables a lot. He wasn't giving people scientific formulas.
Okay.
So even people who were, who were there listening to Jesus really didn't know a lot of things of what He meant.
Yeah.
And that was the intention. You know, I
To
believe.
be intentionally ambiguous?
Yeah, he says that.
Well, don't you think it
That's kind of
matters
a
a lot
strange deity.
if he's talking a lot about your fate for what's going to happen to you for all of eternity? He'd want to make it a little more clear what you should do to make the right decisions.
Yeah, and what he said was, love your neighbor as yourself. It's the greatest commandment you can do. If you love your neighbor as yourself, you're not going to stone
But
him
he
to
also
death.
said if you would be perfect, then you should sell all your wealth and give it to the poor and go be a hermit.
Exactly, and you cannot love your family.
I mean, have you
must-
done
I
that?
agree there.
Have you done that?
Of course not.
Didn't think so.
No Christians have.
You must disown your family.
Well,
to
then
be
you're
a
not
good
very
Christian.
safe because, I mean, you know, you're not doing what Jesus told you to do.
Well, see, my point is that you can't approach that whole thing logically. It's illogical.
Obviously.
That's the problem with it.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's the problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, check this one out. I think in the book of Genesis, when it said, like, Adam and Eve, did Adam and Eve have Abel and Cain?
Yeah.
And Cain slew Abel
Yes.
and then was kicked out, and
Yeah.
Cain went to live with these other people. Well, how could Cain go and live with these other people if there were only Adam and Eve?
Yeah.
That's the first mistake in the Bible.
Yeah. Well,
Right
not
away.
first,
Well,
but
you know, you would be surprised at how many ways people can twist themselves in knots and fall over themselves
Yeah,
trying to explain that stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
People have a good time trying to figure out those things.
I know, and defending them. And I had a guy explain to me that in the old days, people really did. There are scientists who are trying to prove that that people could have lived to be 700 years old way back when in Noah's time
Yeah.
because the oxygen was purer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're looking for things
Yeah.
like that to sort of back up the
Right.
Bible.
Yeah, before the flood, the atmosphere was different. We had this water
Yeah.
layer and all
Yeah.
this. Again, until they have any form of proof or evidence or anything like this,
Right.
just a good story.
The
Actually,
problem
not even
is-
all that good of a story. Kind of a bad story.
But I think
The problem is that anytime they come up with a claim that can be tested, it turns out to be false.
Yeah,
So, you know, they just come up with these more and more vague claims over time,
Yeah.
which can't be tested. Like, you know, well, you know, you should really just believe it without evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny how like the Christians spend so much time doing this. Do the Hindus hang out trying to prove, you know, the Bhagavad Gita is the word of, you know, Vishnu?
I don't know. I think there has been some violence in India over that, so
Yeah.
I would not
Well,
be
they're just
surprised.
fanatical, plainly. I mean, you know, they're just nuts.
Oh, yeah.
So,
You know, the Muslims
Unlike
and
the
whole thing.
Christians.
yeah, exactly.
Just, you know, but I mean, I do like the basic principles, which is like love your neighbors yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you love your neighbors yourself,
again-
you're not going to stone them to death.
A lot of religions have that general idea, and
Yeah.
you can also come up with perfectly secular, non-religious, non-God reasons that treating your neighbor well is a good thing.
Oh, just as a humanitarian.
So exactly, humanism.
Yeah.
You don't need God to say this
Right.
to realize that that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
So
I
since
think
we
that
have
if you-
other reasons that I can show have a really good chance of this is why we should this is a good non-theistic reason of why we should treat people well.
Oh,
and
totally.
I can show that these things actually exist.
Yeah.
That's a better reason than saying because God says so. Because
right,
if for
right.
some reason you take out God out of the equation,
Yeah.
if science in some imaginable way proves tomorrow that God could not possibly exist,
Right.
then your whole basis for morality has just gone poof.
Well,
You kind of have to start back from scratch.
That's assuming that the reason why people treat their neighbor good is because they're scared shitless of burning in hell.
But a lot of people call this show and say that's exactly why we act good. You know?
Exactly.
We've had arguments in the past
Yeah.
where we said, well, if you found out tomorrow there was no God, then would you go out and kill somebody? And they were like, yes.
No, they didn't hem and haw on it. They said, yeah.
Yeah, and
I
I think
heard some of them hemmed and hawed.
Yeah, and that's ridiculous because
So,
Yeah.
you know it's something you should want to do, not out of fear.
yeah.
You know, the
So,
whole thing-
therefore, you don't
I
need
love it when
God.
people talk about, you know, he's a God-fearing Christian.
Yeah. So you don't need God then.
Right. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, interesting stuff how these people behave sometimes.
Quite so.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys.
Well, we're going to go on and take up some of the callers. Thanks a lot for calling.
All right. Bye.
Bye. All right. Let's see. Now we can go on to... okay. Todd, how you doing?
Pretty good. How y'all doing?
Pretty well.
Good.
Yeah, I wanted to, first of all, touch on that, the lady that called a while ago. She was talking about Madalyn Murray O'Hare.
Okay.
And I had the privilege of marching on Congress, on the Capitol.
Yeah, 2002, Godless Americans March on Washington.
Well, it was here in Austin. It was the day before Easter. I think it was 91.
Okay.
Oh,
92.
Okay. I don't remember that one. Well, I wasn't here then, so okay.
But anyway, that was got to meet her and everything. That was really cool. Actually, that's how my mom found out I was an atheist, because we were marching right behind the group of gay American atheists. Okay. And they were dressed up, some of them were dressed up like the Pope and stuff, and they had these elaborate, shiny costumes.
Oh, I can see it now. Are you gay?
They're walking around an arm, kissing, and my mom.
Okay.
My mom just happened to be in the hotel that the march started in. Okay. And she was telling me about all these, oh, there were these gay atheists down there, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, me and Rex and Steve, we were all standing right behind them. So she didn't know whether to think I'm gay or I'm an atheist.
Both.
So that was kind of a little stretch. But the main thing I wanted to comment on was the whole Pledge of Allegiance thing. Okay. And, to me, what people look at this in completely the wrong way. I mean, because when you think of the Pledge of Allegiance, it was written in 1890 by a socialist Baptist clergyman, I believe. Yeah. And we all know what it used to say. And the way people need to look at it is that's a piece of literature. That's a piece of art. And, when they inserted under God and the words United States of America into that, they altered a piece of literature. It's like going into Shakespeare and saying, "There's not enough God in this Shakespeare shit. We need to bulk up the God content in this." Or taking the Statue of Liberty, which is a symbol of our country, and going, I really wish she was holding a giant cross instead of a torch. So why don't we get on that? And I'm sure
we have more purple over here.
Yeah, So I just don't understand why people don't look at it that way. The words were out of the pledge a lot longer than they were in. Yeah. And no one even seems to understand that the only reason our government did that and put "In God We Trust" on the money was because they were trying to show those damn Russians that we fear God.
Well, that was actually for the pledge, but "In God We Trust" has been on the money for a lot longer.
Well, it wasn't mandated to be on the money until the 50s. It was on the money. Yeah, you're right, on and off. Okay. But you could find coins and money prior to 1950 without that on it. Okay. They may have been on there up until the 30s, but I've come across certain currencies where I'm like, hey, there's nothing on here. I'm going to save this because. Yeah. But it pretty much became law in '54, I think it was. Yeah. And which isn't that legislating a religion? I thought we had an amendment that had something to do with that.
Well, that's the point of this case. But what the court's going to argue, what the court has been arguing is. We've been saying under God for so long that it's kind of meaningless. It's not really a prayer to God. It's just something you say.
It's meaningless.
Yeah, that's why all these people are out there screaming bloody murder. Because it's meaningless.
Exactly. That's the one I don't understand. They're out there putting up such a strong fight of why we should keep it in, but the basis of that is it doesn't really mean anything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't mean anything, it's ticking off a whole bunch of other people. If it doesn't mean anything to you, take it out. Yeah. You're not losing anything.
Go for it.
And they're going to be happier.
Yeah.
So, I don't know why they don't see it that way. But, oh well. Did you have anything else for us?
I believe that was about it.
Okay. All right. Thanks for calling. All right. Let's see. I think we got time for a couple more callers.
Uh-oh.
What?
This last question could take a whole hour. No.
Okay, let's go with Tom. How you doing?
Hi, my name is Tom Kershaw, and I was raised Roman Catholic, but I've been through a number of religions, Eastern and otherwise, and don't really know that I have any particular religion right now. Okay. But it seems to me that there's one thing that as human beings we all have in common. It's like the old Paul Gauguin painting where he has that painting that's subtitled, "Where are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going?" Yeah. And it seems to me as human beings it's kind of a natural thing to wonder, where do we come from? And I think that's basically one of the things that religion and science both try to answer, where do we come from? Yeah. And I'm just wondering, I think, Russell, it may have been you that said your father was a physicist.
Yeah.
And just wondering, you know, and I know atheists are a very diverse group of people, but how would that be answered? Where do we come from if there is no God? And by God, I don't necessarily mean the Christian God sitting up there stroking his beard and looking at us, but some sort of higher power. Where do we come from?
Well, we know a lot of stuff from the evidence that we have. Unfortunately, that stuff would take a lot longer to go into than the 5 minutes we have left.
Sure.
So I would suggest that Steve put up the Talk Origins link. But basically, by studying things, we know a lot of things that happened after the universe came into existence. I mean, you know, things that, from what we've studied, my understanding is that we know what happened about back to the first, what was it, 10 to the minus 43 seconds after the universe exploded from an infinitely dense, or not infinitely dense, but extremely dense point of matter. The reason we don't know what happened before that is that you know, the laws of physics break down when you're inside something that dense. So anything we could say at that point would require a whole different way of looking at things.
Right.
But I mean, after that happened, you know, after there's all this matter, we have separate fields of study that tell us things like how stars came together out of random clouds of matter, how you know, how planets came to be. A whole lot of different theories about how the first single-celled organism could have come into being. And after that, the theory of evolution takes over, which explains where we come from out of that stuff.
Right.
You know, this is stuff that we're not just guessing and saying, you know, it would be nice to have happened, but we're looking and saying, based on the evidence, it looks like this is what actually happened.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think it's when you get back to that initial millisecond that things sort of start to get weird. I mean, it seems
that's
like
true, but there are, of course, a whole lot of weird different theories that don't involve God about what happened before that. So, I mean...
And the idea of just God of the gaps is, again, so long ago, we had no idea how people could have come to be. And so we didn't know that thing, so God did it.
Right.
We don't know right now precisely how the universe started. We have it from, you know, we have it from a tenth of a second on. Before the tenth of a second, we don't know.
Right.
So
one of the things
I'm reluctant to just plug that hole with God and be done with it.
One of the things that we have the luxury of saying as atheists is, hey, we don't know. We're working on it. You know, Christians in some sense don't have that luxury because supposedly there's a guy who knows everything and he communicates with them directly. So if somebody asks him a question, it's kind of embarrassing not to know the answer. Whereas we go ahead and admit, we don't know that yet. It would be an interesting question to continue to investigate, and we hope we find out eventually.
Sure.
But my dad would say, and he has said when he made guest appearances on this show a couple of times, he would say that of all the complicated things we know of in the universe, intelligence is one of the most complicated of all. So it makes no sense to try to explain all the complicated things by postulating an even more complicated thing that caused it all to happen. In other words, God, because that's just going the wrong way.
Well, I see what you're saying. There's part of me that admires logic greatly. My father was an agnostic in the purest sense of the word. He said that I don't think there's any proof that God exists or does not exist, and so I'm just, you know, not going one way or the other.
Okay.
But I almost think that there's a.
We have got 1 minute left.
Well, okay.
So
just finish up with two thoughts. One, I think that there's an irrational component to the universe that logic cannot touch, and two, I know that there's a lot of emphasis in the program I've watched it the last few weeks on Christianity, but the other religions out there, Hinduism, Buddhism in particular, Buddhism doesn't even necessarily posit a supreme being, and so might be worth looking into that somewhere at some point. So I appreciate your dialoguing with you guys.
Okay, all right. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, I hope everybody enjoyed the show. This is Sunday. We have reruns on Tuesday. Again, you can visit our website, atheist-community.org, and read about the FAQ and see everything that we do on there. Hope everybody has a good week. Thanks to our crew and
send our love rings out.
Yes, and thank you, Russell, for co-hosting this week.
Thank you for having me.
And everybody have a great